Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Work It, Live It, Own It. I am thrilled to have two powerhouse guests joining us today, Jen and Stacy Conkey. They have over 2 decades of investment experience and a passion for transforming the multifamily education space. Now, Jen and Stacy are here to share their invaluable insights into scaling a thriving multifamily business as co-founders of the Remote Multifamily Investing Academy and authors of the book Multifamily Freedom Hacking. They're going to bring their wealth of knowledge and a transformative approach to real estate investing. So I want you to buckle up and get ready to get inspired and empowered as we delve into their journey and uncover the blueprint of scaling a multifamily business. We're going to be covering three main areas today: empowering mindset shifts, tangible tools for success, and disrupting the status quo. Welcome to the Work It, Live It, Own It community, Jen and Stacy. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
You're welcome. So, the first thing that I normally like to ask my guests when they're coming on is some of the biggest challenges that you have faced when it came to scaling your multifamily business. What does your multifamily business look like? First of all, when you talk about multifamily business.
Yeah. So our multifamily business, we've got two aspects of it. We invest actively and we also raise capital so that we can invest other people's capital into our deals. So we have two, where one is we're building our portfolio and then the other is a capital company. And, we're remote investors. So from the beginning, it's a bit of a mindset shift, especially for me, because I spent 22 years in corporate America. And, it's different when the strategy comes down from the top and all you need to do is execute it.
Right.
But when you go into business for yourself, as you've got to come up with that strategy yourself. And then you also got to execute it until you can find or afford the team that can execute it for you. So it was a little bit of a transition for me, at least, to go into that level of business. But ours, we actively invest and we also help people passively invest. And we also have an academy. We have 3 businesses. Oh my gosh. I just realized how busy we are. Yeah, we have an academy where we teach people how to actively invest the same way that we do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. And so what has been some of the biggest challenge? You mentioned just one right there. You're coming from your 9 to 5, from being an implementer, and now you're being the innovator, the creator, the implementer. That's one of the biggest challenges, one challenge. But what would you say would be the biggest challenge you faced so far when it comes to scaling a multifamily business?
Ooh, there's a few, but the biggest one that I had to get my mind wrapped around is that I wouldn't be able to find the money. And that tends to be, in our experience, what about 80% of the people that we run into, they can't understand or wrap their mind around, well, how can I go buy an apartment building? And I don't have that kind of money.
Right.
And it took a while to get used to the fact that because it's not just financing with the bank. You've also got to go after some private money to close the gap on it. And that's the piece that I always got stuck on. So it took me a while to wrap my mind around that. And then as soon as I did, the next challenge from a mindset perspective was going to ask people for money, is the meaning that I gave to it. So the mindset shift needed to be, I'm not asking for money. It's not like I'm asking for a handout. I'm actually providing an investment opportunity for them to get a return on their money. So I'm actually serving them. But it took a while to make that shift. Once I did, it's been nonstop ever since. It was easier to scale that way. But in the beginning, it was very difficult. And the first time somebody said we needed to go raise $50,000 to $100,000 per person to invest, I was like, oh my gosh, wow. How am I going to get that? But then really just redefining the meaning, and it's actually getting a return for them. And it changed the game. I think that when we assign a meaning to something, it could be a little scary. And if we hold on to that meaning, it can terrify us. And the longer we stick with that, oh, wow, we'll just ruminate for days. But as soon as we shift the meaning, things start to change because we believe something different. So then we think something different. We'll feel differently about it, and then we'll act differently. And so I think that was probably the biggest one for me. I don't know if there was a bigger one for you.
No, I think, I feel like we'll probably end up getting into this a little bit more, but I think just going from wanting to get into larger like larger properties. And when you're in multifamily or you're in any kind of real estate where you're going to bring in other people's money to, supplement yours, there's joint ventures where you're just actively doing the deal together. But when you want to go bigger, that's not realistic to do that anymore. And so that was probably the biggest like mindset shift, is how do I go from having everybody be active and a few partners to like raising capital, which is, what our capital company does now. But that was a big one for me. So I guess it's kind of similar. It was just from a different standpoint, but it ultimately comes down to the raising the money for the deals.
Yeah, you got to have a pretty solid relationship with money, because even after it shifted for me to ask to provide the service and get the return, the more money there was and the bigger the deals that grew as we stair-stepped, the more responsibility you feel to be a good steward of that money. And so you've got to shift it again. And I wish that I would have had the magic wand back when I first started to get all of that just out of the way and move forward, but I didn't. And so maybe it'll help you. But going through that and just taking all of it out in the beginning, like, okay, I have a good relationship with money. I spend to get an ROI. I receive to give an ROI. You know what? Everything's going to be okay. And I know what I'm doing and I have belief in myself. So there's no evidence really that I'm going to lose people's money. Having those conversations in my own head to get myself logically there, I started to believe it differently. But in the beginning, it feels like you're just stuck and oh my gosh, I can't even unpack this. There's so many things to unpack. But those are probably the three biggest things: not thinking you're going to find the money, then finally believing you can do it and asking for it. And then once you get it, oh my God, that's a lot of responsibility. So those are probably the three biggest, and they're all related to money.
Mm-hmm. You hit on a couple of good points that a lot of entrepreneurs face. Number one is, especially if you're in the business of real estate investing or just starting out in a business in general, even if it's just something as simple as going to the bank and trying to build your business credit, you're trying to convince the bank to give you money or loan you money so you can help them to see, hey, this is going to be a good return on your investment by investing into me, instead of saying, you know what, I'm just here asking you for money. Can you please give me some money? So, and a lot of people think, oh, mindset shift, that's, woo woo. It is, if you transform your way of thinking and how you view things, sometimes the anxiety and stress can be totally lifted off your shoulders if you just shift your thinking. Another thing is that I hear a lot of people do in programs is talk about having a good relationship with money. And I'm pretty sure you probably have gone over this a little bit more in your book, Multifamily Freedom Hacking, but can you delve just a little bit more into that relationship with money? What was something as far as tangible that really helped both of you? And just for our audience, if you're watching on YouTube, Jen, raise your hand so they'll know which one is Jen. And then that's Stacy if you're watching on YouTube. But what would be a tangible thing that you had to really, truly hone in on when it came to your relationship? You said with your relationship with money is learning how to handle it. How did you handle that? That is a hefty responsibility. I would be stressed. I probably have more gray hair than I have now, but
yeah.
Did you do
one of the biggest things that happened early on in my career that was very helpful just in life in general. I was in my 20s, and my biggest focus in my 20s when I was having money and making money, and first of all, in my childhood, I came from two different households, right? My mom didn't have much money. My dad was upper middle class. I lived on both sides of the tracks, so I can assimilate. And I also understand both sides of the money fence, if you will. So I already had that. So as soon as I started making a lot of money in corporate America, all I wanted to do was spend it on all the things that would make me look cool, all those status things. And throughout my 20s, I realized that I fell victim, if you will, not that I want to identify as a victim, but to marketing and all of the things that, you buy that give you status, and not realizing that the status comes from within. It took me until my 30s for that, but I wasn't even aware of it until someone pointed out to me, you're going after this the wrong way. You're buying rims for your car, a stereo system for your car. You don't even have an asset. You're getting all these things. And I was like, yeah, but I look cool doing it. And they're like, I actually don't think so. Mm-hmm. And it stung a little bit like, wait, what? No, I'm so cool. What are you talking about? Like, no, you're not. You know what's cool to me? Putting your money to work. That's what's cool to me. And I will never forget it. I was 26 years old and it was one of my friends. She was a few years older than me and she was already buying properties. And I thought, wow, she's buying them, holding them and renting them. And at the time I was a flipper. So to me, I was like, maybe she has a point. So that was a hard lesson. Sometimes we hear what we don't want to hear, but we need to hear in order to grow. And that was one of those moments. I was 26. I finally said, you know what? I'm not going to buy any more rims or the lights under my car or, the nice things, because that doesn't matter. What'll be really impressive is when I can buy an asset that gives me money to pay for those things so I don't have to keep grinding. So that was the first shift in my money relationship. And I was also raised in a household where, you go to college, you buy a house. It's the American dream. That's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And, I really wish that if I could go back in time and have a conversation with my 20-year-old self, I would have said something along the lines of, none of that matters. None of it matters. Don't keep the 150 grand that you have. Don't put it down on that personal residence. Go buy an asset instead, because it took me until much later to figure that out. So I spent a lot of time trying to, get the chip off my shoulder about proving myself in my relationship with money. And a lot of the time I felt sort of like an imposter, because in the back of my mind, subconsciously, I knew that I had already been called out for not having a strong relationship with money. And that kind of set the vibe for when I'm going to ask for money. I had to go back and recall that conversation and then remind myself of all the evidence of how I changed my behavior. And therefore, because I changed my behavior, there's really no evidence that I'm going to go back to doing that. I haven't bought a pair of rims for a car in, 23 years. And I'd rather just buy a property that will pay me for the toys that I want to play with. And I'm not even going to buy the boat. I'm going to lease it for the day, or I'm going to go do those things. And renting behavior is way better than trying to own it. But I was raised to own, to go to college, to buy your home, do the American dream. And it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s when I realized the bank is who profits from that, not me. I got my MBA in business administration, and I didn't use it until I launched the academy. Wow. I had a much more lucrative skill set in building a multifamily business or building a real estate investing business than I did with using my business master's degree. Mm-hmm. And I'm still paying on that student loan. So to me, they make the money, not us when we do, unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right, or something where, you have to get educated and then you've got to go into some form of residency to actually practice and implement. Mm-hmm. I feel like unless you're doing those things, you don't really need a college education. You can find a trade, find something you love to do and monetize it. I happen to love real estate.
I mean, you better preach that. I'm just saying, because I've talked to people, and our backgrounds are similar. I was raised by my mom, low income, striving, every day with survival mode. And then my father was totally different, middle class, and he would invest, but we never really had conversations about the relationship with money and investing. So yeah, I go to college because I'm told you got to go to college. You got to get that 4-year degree. And okay, now I walk out and I'm in debt. So I'm glad you brought that up, because we have our millennials, our Gen Zs, they are so freaked out because they're told, and me being an educator as well, you're told, go to college, get that 4-year degree. Okay, but for what? For history?
Right.
For sociology? Right. For anthropology? And there's not a knock against that. But I look at the debt that you will incur. And if you're getting a full free ride, okay, great, that's great. But when you walk out of there, how much debt have you incurred? And it's so much expensive now for just hoping and wishing and praying that someone would take you in and say, hey, I'll pay you a minimal fee, or hourly wage or salary for that. So just out of curiosity for both of you, how much would it take to invest? And you brought up a good point. Instead of taking $150,000 and putting it down on a house, your first deal, how much would you say would someone need to start
You go ahead, but
investing?
because it all depends, but I'm going to let Stacy run with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends. So it depends on the path that someone's taking. So because we teach, we see a lot of different, along the spectrum, a lot of different people. So it depends. When we have people who come in and they want to buy something small to get started, like something with 2 to 4 units, it's still multifamily, but it's residential. The price points are obviously going to be a lot lower than if you're buying a 10 unit that might be between $500,000 and $1 million, depending on where it is. So when someone's starting with, a smaller deal, we always tell people have 25,000 at least, but no matter what, it honestly doesn't even matter, Sekolah, because when I started in real estate, I didn't have, and it was over 20 years ago, but I didn't have capital, and my credit was like, it wasn't great. I didn't have good relationship with money in the beginning. But I didn't have capital. What I had was a willingness to learn. I went and got educated. I was extraordinarily enthusiastic. I was enthusiasm like bursting out of the seams. And so I would go to investor clubs and, to learn whatever the speaker had to say, but I would meet other people who, like me, were really interested in real estate investing, but they didn't know how to do it. And they, but they had capital, they had money. And so just in talking to them, they were like, well, so you know how to blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. And they're like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. And so it started opening the conversation to, well, if you want, I have this deal, I'll do the work, and you put up the capital, and we could do the deal together. And you can learn by doing it then. And, so I started teaching without meaning to teach, like really early on, but I started realizing you don't actually need to have a lot of capital. If you're the one willing to go out and make it happen, then you're partnering with people who do. But if someone's just trying to take down their own property, probably $50,000 is going to be a realistic amount to start with if you're trying to do it on your own without, partnering with anyone. But otherwise, there really is no number. You need to have enough money to put down an earnest money deposit and pay for your due diligence. But I mean, we just closed on a 48 unit deal with a couple of our students we've known for a long time. And I think they put maybe $25,000 into a $5 million asset. They put $25,000. So it's not like it was even that much. We had to go and raise 2.2 million. So all these other investors who don't want to deal with doing all the things, they just want to be able to put their money into something that's real estate because they've heard real estate's good. It's a good way to build wealth. It's safe, yada, yada. They just want to be able to put their capital in and get a return. So it's a win-win. So everybody on the team started reaching out to all the people that we know that might be interested and gave people an opportunity to put money into that deal.
Yeah, that's really the secret sauce right there is that there's active investors, folks that want to actively do it and build their own business at it. And they've got 10 to 15 hours a week to dedicate to it. Some of us 40 to 60. And then other folks who, they're building their business and they're going deep, building wealth in that business, and they don't have time. They don't have 10 to 15 hours. But what they do have is a surplus of cash that they got to put to work because they're afraid of inflation. Right. So a lot of the time we'll have those types of folks that are in our network. They're all entrepreneurs that, hey, I don't have time for that, Jen and Stacy, but you have a deal. Here's $100,000 or here's $50,000 or our attorney put in $300,000 into the deal. And because they don't have the time to go do it themselves, but they want their money to get a return. So they'll give it to us to go invest. So we could really help both sides of the fence on that. We can help the active investor understand doing it. And like Stacy said, have $20,000 available in reserves, if you will, and then try to put the deal together and get other people to do it with you. Or if you don't have time, then just try and find somebody that you would like, know, and trust to invest in their deal and get your capital to work so that you're still doing your business and doing real estate. Or if you want to just go straight in and do only real estate and build that and then do something different. Either way, that's what's beautiful about it. That's what's amazing about it. It's not like you're confined to that brick and mortar college education that you're getting. You have options. Options are nice.
Yes, yes. And especially for those who may have received an inheritance or a certain amount of funds, and you don't want all of that taxed or
Right.
being penalized for
Yeah.
that, investing it. So, and I like how you do the twofold approach for those who are actively wanting to invest and those who say, you know what, I want a good ROI on the money that's just sitting in the bank, and I'm praying and hoping that the bank will give me a return on investment with the small interest rates that some of them provide. How long would you say it would take for someone who, I'm just throwing a figure out there, okay? Say they had 20,000. That's what they had starting out for their first one, and they just wanted to say, "Here, Jen and Stacy, here's $20,000. I would like to invest with you for a multifamily complex or something that's coming up." How soon, or what is the time frame for them to actually receive a return on, to see a return on that?
Well, so one thing would be that there $20,000 would be enough to do an active investment, like like a duplex or something, like with a partner. But if you're going to passively invest, most deals have a minimum of 50,000 or a minimum of 100,000. Those are the two metrics you usually see. So at 20,000, that probably wouldn't be an option. So let's just say it's 50,000 for the purpose of answering your question. If someone has only $20,000 to invest, then we would look at that and say that if they only have $20,000, are we putting them in the best position to have their money locked up for 5 years? If this is all that the additional capital they have, probably not. That wouldn't serve them best. So if they really want to do it, let's teach you how that you can actually get in and get started, but without taking your last, $20,000.
Okay.
But when someone is going to do like a passive investment, it depends on what the deal is that they're investing in. For example, if the property being purchased is what we call stabilized, meaning it's already rented, it's already cash flowing. So day one, you buy it, you have income coming in already, then typically you're getting a distribution every 3 months, once a quarter. So, once the deal has closed for 3 months and operated, then you're usually getting a return like that the following month, and then every 3 months. That's the most common. But another deal out there that's really popular, depending on what's going on with the interest rates and things, it's called a value add. And it's one where you're not getting regular distributions in the beginning. Sometimes maybe if you're lucky by year 2, but you make a lot of money at the end because you're raising the value of the property up. And then after 3 years or 5 years, however long the whole period is, when they sell it, that's when the majority of the capital comes. So it really depends. The timing depends on what kind of deal you're putting your money into. But we have, since interest rates went up, we really shifted our whole investing strategy to only invest in things that are cash flowing on day one. We want there to be upside. We always want there to be upside that we can make a profit at the end. But if it doesn't cash flow from day one, we're not doing it. Not right now. Which in the past we have, but not.
But that makes sense. You have to.
We're also holding them longer, 5 to 7 years, because we don't know where interest rates are going to be at the tail end. That impacts things.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly and my audience is hearing you, if $20,000, if that's what they have saved up, they might want to do something a little bit more active, like a small duplex or quadruplex. 50,000 and up, that's where you can start saying, you know what, here's what I want to do. I trust you guys that you're going to take my money, you're going to invest it wisely, and depending on the type of deal, it will determine how soon I will see a return on my investment.
Yeah. No, one thing I want to make sure we don't represent this differently than it is. It's not like people just say, "Oh, here's my money." Like go ahead and good luck and let's make a lot. It's that we have a deal and we're like, here's the deal. Here's all the different things about it. If you want to invest in the deal, then they're investing in the deal, like almost like not through us. They don't send the money to us personally. We send it to the bank account for the property. But anyway, I feel like it's an important distinction because we don't take people's money and then go decide. We're like, this is the deal. This is how long we're going to hold it for. This is how much we think it's going to be as far as a return. Here's the cash flow. Here's all the due diligence we did. Here's why we like the market. And if they're like, yeah, okay, I'm interested, I like that, then they would invest. with us, but not.
They're investing through us.
Yeah.
They're investing in the deal through us.
Yes.
And the reason why I think Stacy is trying to make that distinction is because there are things out there called funds where you could give your cash to them and they pool the funds and then they go invest in a bunch of different deals. But then you're investing in different deals and sometimes you don't know what it is. So we don't do it that way. We like to grab the deal so you know exactly what you're investing in and exactly what you're to expect versus investing into a fund that then finds deals. So, I didn't think about giving that distinction, but it is important. It's important to know the difference.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. It is important. So have you ever had to deal with someone who is a newbie straight out the gate and was like, okay, you let me see the type of deal. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, how will I know what's happening with the deal? Are you going to keep me in the loop of what's going on?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, so anytime someone is doing an investment in that would be in a syndication where they're just putting up the money and they're totally passive. The operating team usually provides monthly or quarterly updates. Like, here's what's happened the last 3 months. And here's what the performance is. Here are the challenges we faced. Here's an opportunity. This is what we're doing about it. So that's typical that once a quarter, there's usually a webinar where all of the investors can get on and hear the update, but then also ask questions. And then usually if something happens in between those calls, that's noteworthy, which would usually be if it was something bad. But like let's say if there was a fire or something, which would be awful, but let's just say there was that, then that would be something that would be communicated to all of the investors immediately because, hey, something substantial has taken place. But otherwise, it's just usually a monthly report or quarterly.
Our approach, we like to take our investors and we do a quarterly Zoom where they come on and we present, here's how everything went for the last quarter. If we had a property where we were stabilizing it, we like to produce here's how the stabilization is going. We either have it on point already and we're doing our distributions, and then here's what the next 3 months are going to look like. We like to do it that way in that cadence, in a quarterly cadence, and do our distributions also. So it helps the passive investor learn what our strategies are. Then they learn what questions to ask. They get to see firsthand that their investment is safe and that it's performing. And they get the venue to ask questions. We're obviously open for questions anytime they want to email us and ask us a question, but we like to educate our passive investors so that they know what they're getting into and they're learning along the way. And 9 times out of 10, our passive investors, once they have time, they want to learn how to actively do it because now they're like, oh, now I know, and it doesn't look that hard. And I have more time, So that's how our approach is. Not everybody does it that way, but that is definitely our approach. We like to teach as we go. That's why we have the academy.
I love how you include everyone and keep them in the loop because I think that will probably be one of the scariest things.
Yes.
Yeah. When you're in the business of like raising capital or even doing real estate where you're going to have people come into your deals, if you don't do that and you don't communicate well, that will be the only time and last time they'll ever invest with you. And one of the things that's been really beneficial for us is we have investors who invest with us over and over and over because we keep people in the loop. And I learned this really early on. It was within my first, year. I was towards the end of my first year and there was like the rehab was delayed. It was just like a duplex and we were doing a big rehab on it. And there was some kind of delay and I was freaking out because I was like, oh my gosh, I told them this number of months and now they're going to be so mad. And I was like, and so I was like, oh my gosh, just ripped the Band-Aid off. So I called my investor and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know this is what's going on and I'm really sorry, but here's the plan and it should be done by X time. And they were like, okay. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, oh, I really thank you for letting me know. I appreciate knowing what's going on. Yeah. So thank you. I was like, oh, okay. And so thankfully it was a really early lesson that regardless of whether it's good news or bad news, it's not that. It's when someone doesn't hear anything. Then they freak out, which I would too. If I was putting my money in and I just hear nothing, it's like, did you like run off with my money? Like what's going on? So communication is one of the most important things when you are doing real estate with other people's money, because that's their security. That's their retirement. And
And the last thing we would want is if we're having an obstacle for them to find out in some email instead of us contacting them.
Yeah.
So it's a relationship business, and that's how we treat it. It's not exactly transactional for us. It's a relationship, and we want it to be a long-term relationship. So the proactive communication is it's everything. It's everything.
Yes, it is. And thank you for sharing that, because that would make future joint ventures successful. Can you share any other specific strategies or techniques that you use to leverage your joint ventures effectively before diving into larger syndications or deals?
So the whole premise of doing joint venture. So because we deal with a lot of people who want to learn how to actively do it, so they come to us, and most of the other education that's out there will talk about, you can get into your first 100-unit deal. Like, why would you bother with a 10-unit? You can go right to 100 units, it's the same amount of work. And it's a really misleading and false and, I don't know, lies.com, basically, way of presenting it to people who are new, because they make it sound very sexy. And that's their way of getting you in and joining their program. The reality is, someone who's brand new and trying to do their first apartment building, you can't take down a 100-unit building.
You don't even know how to manage a 2-unit building.
Right.
Let alone 100.
Nobody's going to put money into your deal because you have no experience. The bank is definitely not going to lend you money because you don't have experience. The brokers won't even send you the deals because you don't have experience. And so one of the things we were really passionate about with like disrupting the whole education industry of multifamily is getting rid of that BS message about starting with 100 units or starting with syndication. One of the things that we teach our students, and I'll tell anybody who will listen, is like, look, you have no idea how much you are going to learn on just a small apartment building. Apartments start at 5 units. So it's not like it has to be something huge, but even something as small as like an 8-unit or a 10-unit, that first one that you do from start all the way to finish, it's like the amount of stuff you learn from it is mind-boggling. And you don't realize until you're in it. And our students are all getting educated. It's all theory. And then when they're going to do it, they're like, oh, and they are so much better prepared after closing and operating a 10-unit than someone who's trying to go into 100 units. And they get a 10-unit, and then they're like, okay, I got this down now. Now I have confidence, they have credibility, and they have experience. And then the next one is, 20 or 30 units. And then they get that one under their belt. So the banks are like, okay, good. I see that you're stair stepping. You're building your knowledge. You're building your foundation. The brokers like it because they've seen you actually close on something. And your future partners and investors are like, okay, good. I like that this 100-unit isn't the first one you're doing. Because when you make a mistake in apartments, it's like, it could be 6-figure mistakes if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And so if someone goes into a 5 or 10 million or more asset right off the bat, and they make a few small mistakes, those small mistakes can be big dollars. So that's when we talk about leveraging joint ventures, it's like, do a couple of small joint venture deals first, where you could raise all the money with like 3 or 4 people, just a small group.
And that's key too, because most people, like I said in the beginning, they're stuck on the money part. Well, if you're stuck on the money part and you're going in for a 100-unit, I'm telling you right now, that's at least a $3 million raise.
Yeah.
Versus going for a 10-unit and maybe doing, I don't know, a $250,000 raise. The commas matter. If it's 1 comma, it's easier to raise than 2 commas, especially if you've never raised any commas. I think that that's a critical piece too, is that's the part that a lot of people, why they're afraid of money, is because they think that they've got to go big, and you just don't. If you start smaller, it's easier to raise in smaller chunks and stair step faster than you could possibly think.
Yeah. And it happens a lot faster than someone who's trying to go in and take on their first big deal.
Yeah.
And because they'll spend literally years trying to get their first deal, instead of just come in and start with something small. Within a year or 2, you could be into hundreds of units at a time because you actually know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's our whole message that we're really trying to get out to people. Cause I feel like people have been led down a path that has no success. There's just 0 success rate for people who are trying to go from nothing into something big. They can't take it down.
Right.
If they can take down a 10-unit, learn a ton, and then do a 20, a 40, an 80, and then be into the hundreds of units within a year or 2. So.
Wow. That fast. So thank you for sharing that. So if someone's just starting out, I'm gonna use me as an example, because I'm as a realtor, I'm used to dealing with the traditional side, helping people find homes, which I love, and helping them take that next step forward. However, what I heard Jen say earlier is to get the education, you, Stacy, showing up and in real estate investor meetings. But you also brought something to the table. You disrupted the status quo because you had a knowledge on how to raise capital. So if people wanted to learn how to raise capital and going out and talking to investors, potential investors, and saying, hey, I'm providing a service here, where would they go to get that knowledge? I mean, actual factual knowledge, not the airy fairy stuff, but the real deal.
Well, the one thing I would say is if someone wanted to go and do this, I wouldn't only learn how to raise capital. You really need to understand the whole thing. But what do you just think? Our Warriors of Wealth?
Yeah, warriorsofwealth.com. We have curated a playlist of our blueprint for what we do and how we do it. Okay. And so if they went to warriorsofwealth.com, watch those videos, and at any time, if they had a question, they could book a call and try and explore it. Well, what would I do? What would this look like? But we also have a capital raising course. We've got all the courses for all the things.
Yeah, that's true.
So, if you went to warriorsofwealth.com, that's all of our free stuff. It's a free blueprint to go through that. And if it was like, hey, I kind of want to learn how to do this, and what does it look like to get the course, or what does it look like to get into the academy, then just book the call and we can help out. But we have a specific course on how to raise capital for joint ventures specifically.
So just to get their feet wet, guys, you can head over to warriorsofwealth.com and check out the free information that Jen and Stacy have there for you. And if you think about it and you want to take those next steps, take a look at the courses that they have offered. And what would be the typical investment that someone would have to make to sign up for one of the courses?
Our courses range anywhere from $97 up to $2,500. Okay. I think the capital raising course, I think it's $397. I don't remember. I think it's $397, but I can't remember specifically.
Okay. So it's doable. It's not, multi 4 figures or 5 figures for the program. No. So if you just want to, again, take your time, get your feet wet, look at the free information that they have out there for you at Warriors of Wealth. Is it Warrior or Wealth or Warriors?
Warriors of Wealth.
Warriors of Wealth with an S.
That stuff, it's free, Sokola, but it's very high value classes. It was like our series of our best 8, I think 7 or 8 master classes that we did on different topics within multifamily. So that's even if someone was interested in investing passively, we are firm believers that the more educated you are, even if you're doing passive, the better decisions that you're able to make. So regardless if someone wants to go raise capital, or they're like, well, let me just learn more about this multifamily thing. Either way, that's going to be a really good place to get started.
We have free master classes that we do that are live, and we've got some boot camps coming up. We've got events. So going to that warriorsofwealth.com website to look at all of those videos, opting in for that will put you on the email list. Yeah. So you'd be able to start getting any of the emails about our events where you might be interested in attending also. So it's just, we like to lead with service, and we give away free what most people charge to attend their event for, just because we don't want anybody out there trying it on their own and making very big mistakes and costly mistakes. So we like you to be educated, whether you're investing with us or learning and applying it on your end. You got to know what you're doing.
Love it. Providing value upfront, so people will be thirsty for more of what they're really paying for, because that's nothing more irritating than joining or signing up for a free event and you can get the basic stuff off of YouTube, or you walk away and you're like, I really didn't get anything tangible to take the next step forward, or to even have that desire to invest. So Jen and Stacy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time on your busy schedule to come onto the Work It, Live It, Own It community and share your advice areas of expertise with us. Now, Jen, I heard from you at the very beginning, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of personal advice, it was don't go buy the rims and the
watches.
degrees and the watches, all the stuff that make you look good.
Yeah.
Stacy, is there a piece of advice if you could go back in time and give yourself, what would it be?
I think it would be, no matter what you're doing for work or for a living, is to start a side hustle, like start something on the side. I wish I would have realized that sooner, because I also went to college and did all the debt and everything else, and I don't use that degree anymore. But I didn't become aware of this whole entrepreneurial world until I was, 28 years old. And I was like, I really wish I would have known about it when I was 18. I would have done things differently, or at least started something on the side so I'd have time to build, like learn it and build it. But I think that's the biggest thing I'd say for, start investing in real estate. But it's regardless of what someone's going to do something that is for you. Because when you're working for someone, which is fine, that's, everybody, for a period of time, everyone needs to have a paycheck, but you are building someone else's business. And take some time. And if it's a matter of cutting out Netflix, or cutting out, big chunks of the time that we spend on stuff that doesn't really serve us or grow anything in us, like cutting out some of that and instead investing that time into yourself, whether it's your knowledge or a business you're going to start, or sharpening your skills. I think that's the biggest thing I wish I would have known sooner, is start a business.
Sokola, I have one more thing, and if it's okay, I have a gift that if your audience needed it, knowing that they're entrepreneurs, I know what that's like to start a business. And I'm an NLP master practitioner, hypnotherapist, and I created a mindset course specifically for people that need to strengthen their resilience. And I have an assessment in there where you can assess how resilient you are based on certain circumstances, tells you your score and tells you how to shore up that gap, so that you can get into the mindset of just going for it and doing the things that I wish I would have known about when I was in my early 20s. But it's based off of all of my life lessons. And if it's okay with you and your audience would like it, I'll give you guys that for free.
Sure. I'm sure. Look, if it helps to get over that roadblock of just starting, because I don't care, even if you do start a business, if you don't tackle that from the very beginning, it's still going to come up regardless. And it's going to be a never ending cycle. So thank you.
Yeah. Especially because you told me you have so many Gen Zs and millennials. That's around the age where I needed to hear the stuff that's in that course. So I feel like it'll be very impactful.
Right. So if you want to share that with us, Jen, I appreciate it. And we can put it in the show notes, and I can also send it out in the newsletter, in the Work It, Live It, Own It newsletter. And guys, if you are not subscribed to the Work It, Live It, Own It newsletter, what in the world? I don't know what you're waiting on. Head on over, because we're going to start doing the podcast after parties, and also having wonderful guests like Jen and Stacy who are gifting free things. We're going to put your website in there as well, so they can check out the free course that you have, and so much more. So head on over to workitliveitownit.com. Go ahead and click on subscribe, and it will take you there to sign up for the newsletter. But we're also going to put it in the show notes, because we want to make sure as many of you get access to that information as possible. Well, again, thank you, Jen and Stacy, for joining us today. And that wraps it up for this particular episode, guys. We want to hear from you. We want to keep this conversation going. If you have any questions for Jen and Stacy, I'm going to put all their contact information in the show notes so you can address them directly. If you have any questions for me, you can leave me a voice memo on workitliveitownit.com, or you can email me at info@workitliveitownit.com. But most importantly, don't forget to work it, live it, own it in your everyday lives. Take care, guys.